Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something that's, well, it's on a lot of our minds, AI. Specifically, we're diving into Unscared AI by Barnier. We've got a great set of resources here. Barnier's personal notes, the book's detailed layout, key excerpts, and even a look behind the scenes at how Gemini, Google's language model, actually helped in its creation.
Right.
Our mission today is pretty simple. To cut through all the noise, and really understand why there's just so much anxiety around AI right now.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And more importantly, to help you move from feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed or even fearful to a place of informed confidence.
Absolutely. If you've been feeling that sort of low hum of apprehension whenever AI comes up, and let's be honest, it comes up a lot.
It really does.
Then this deep dive is definitely for you. We want to unpack those feelings, get to the core of why AI sparks such strong reactions, and ultimately equip you with a clearer perspective.
Exactly. And this isn't just about downloading more facts and figures, is it?
Right.
What Barnier's work offers and what we aim to deliver today is a real shift in how you think about and interact with AI. We want to move you from feeling maybe stuck or uncertain to feeling prepared, capable, and in control as this technology evolves.
And it's important to know that Barnier's isn't just speculating here. He brings over 2 decades of real-world experience, leading technical and customer-facing teams dealing directly with AI and related technologies.
Right. He's been in the trenches.
He's been behind the scenes offering what he calls a practical and unfiltered look at what's really going on.
Okay. So here's our plan for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to start by looking at the common anxieties people have about AI. Those headlines and sci-fi scenarios that can really grab our attention.
It's scary stuff, yeah.
Then we'll break down the core technology in plain language, no jargon allowed, hopefully. We'll also discuss what AI can realistically do right now, and perhaps more importantly, what its current limits are. And finally, we'll explore some concrete, actionable steps you could take to engage with AI in your daily life and, well, beyond.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's dive in. Decoding the noise. Why does AI make so many of us, uneasy?
It's interesting, isn't it? What's striking is the sheer range of concerns that surface when AI is the topic. As Barnier points out, there's the very immediate worry about jobs.
Right, the job apocalypse.
Yeah, that idea gets a lot of traction. Then there's the more far-reaching, almost philosophical fear of a superintelligence emerging, the whole rise of the machine scenario where AI becomes uncontrollable.
Skynet.
Exactly, Skynet. We also see very valid concerns about bias finding its way into algorithms and the worry that AI could be misused for harmful purposes like creating weapons or spreading disinformation. And then, of course, you have the black box problem, that feeling that we don't really understand how these systems arrive at their decisions, which can be unsettling.
It's like a perfect storm of potential worries, isn't it? And as Barnier emphasizes, these fears aren't just pulled out of thin air.
No, not at all.
They're often rooted in real concerns. But sometimes those different anxieties can kind of blend together and make it harder to see the actual reality of the technology.
Precisely. And it's crucial for you, the listener, to know that these feelings, whether it's a worry about your career or just a general sense of unease about the future of AI, they're valid.
Yeah.
We're not here to dismiss them. Instead, our goal is to unpack them, understand where they come from, and then offer a more grounded and informed perspective. Barnier highlights that the vivid images, of rogue AI from movies, they trigger what psychologists call our availability heuristic.
Right.
It makes us overestimate the likelihood of those really dramatic events happening, far more than the daily reality of, say, biased algorithms quietly impacting loan applications, which is, less sensational, but maybe a more present concern.
That makes sense. It's easier to picture Terminator than a slightly skewed algorithm. Okay, so we've touched on the landscape of AI anxiety. Now let's get into AI 101. What are we actually talking about when we say AI? No PhD needed, I promise.
Haha, right. A lot of the mystery around AI disappears when you break down some of the core ideas. Barnier does a great job explaining this simply. You often hear terms like machine learning and deep learning. At its core, machine learning is basically about teaching computers through examples. So instead of explicitly programming every single rule, you feed the system vast amounts of data, and it learns to recognize patterns and make predictions based on that data.
Right. So it's like instead of writing code that says a cat has whiskers and pointy ears, you just show it thousands and thousands of pictures labeled cat and not cat, and it figures out the characteristics of catness on its own.
Exactly. And deep learning is a specific type of machine learning that uses something called neural networks. You can think of these as being loosely inspired by the human brain, with layers of interconnected nodes processing information.
Layers. Okay.
Yeah, each layer learns increasingly complex features. So in that cat example you gave, the initial layers might pick up simple things like edges and colors. Then the middle layers start identifying shapes like ears and whiskers, and the deeper layers put it all together to recognize the whole cat.
Ah, I see.
It's this layered pattern recognition that makes deep learning so powerful for things like image and speech recognition. But Barnier highlights something important here. Even incredibly advanced AI can be surprisingly brittle.
Brittle. How so?
Well, think of a self-driving car. It might be trained perfectly on sunny suburban roads, right? But then it gets completely confused by a sudden snowstorm or a construction detour it hasn't seen before in its training data.
Nah, okay. It hasn't learned that specific pattern.
Exactly. This lack of adaptability outside its training is a really key limitation of current AI.
Okay, so that gives us a glimpse into how some of this works. Now, what about the different kinds of AI we hear about? There's narrow AI versus general AI. That seems like a really important distinction to get clear on.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Narrow AI, sometimes called weak AI, is what we have today. This type of AI is designed to excel at very specific tasks within defined areas. Think of it as being incredibly good at one particular job, but only that job.
Like the cat identifier only identifies cats.
Pretty much. On the other hand, artificial general intelligence, or AGI, is still hypothetical. This would be an AI with human-level cognitive abilities capable of understanding, learning, and applying intelligence across a wide range of tasks, just like a human can.
Okay, and that's the stuff of science fiction mostly at this point.
That's right. Barnier emphasizes that AGI does not currently exist. So when we talk about these current limitations, the lack of common sense or true understanding these are inherent to the narrow AI we have now.
Got it. So when we talk about what AI can actually do right now, we're firmly in the realm of narrow AI. Could you give us some concrete examples, maybe ones listeners encounter daily?
Certainly. Narrow AI is already integrated into so many aspects of our lives, often without us noticing. Think about image and speech recognition on your phone, like unlocking it with your face.
Exactly. Or language translation tools that work almost in real time. AI assists doctors in analyzing medical images, like X-rays or MRIs, to help detect diseases earlier.
Wow.
Then there are the recommendation engines on platforms like Netflix and Amazon, suggesting what you might like next based on your past behavior.
Ones that know me too well.
Yeah.
Well.
Banks use AI for fraud detection. Delivery companies use it to optimize logistics and find the most efficient routes. And, of course, chatbots and virtual assistants like Siri or Alexa that can answer your questions.
Right.
These are all powerful tools making a real impact, but they operate within very specific boundaries. They don't have true understanding or common sense or emotional intelligence or the ability to easily apply what they've learned in one area to a completely new one.
That's key.
Understanding both what AI can do and, crucially, what it can't do right now is essential for keeping our expectations grounded and, frankly, for reducing some of that anxiety. Okay, so that's the technical foundation, more or less. Now, Barnier brings this really interesting perspective with his lessons from the trenches. As someone who's been deeply involved in developing and implementing these technologies, what are some of his key insights from that practical, hands-on experience?
Yeah, Barnier's trench view offers some really valuable reality checks. One of the most important is the idea that despite all the talk of AI thinking and deciding, current AI systems are really just sophisticated tools.
Tools made by humans.
Exactly. Made by humans for specific purposes. Their goals aren't driven by desires or intentions in the human sense. They're mathematical objectives set during their training.
So it's not plotting world domination in its downtime.
Not exactly. It doesn't have downtime or intentions like that. And following from that, Barnier stresses that human intention remains absolutely paramount. Whether an AI system has a positive or negative impact is overwhelmingly determined by the choices made by the humans who create and deploy it.
Like the data they choose.
The data they use, the goals they set, the safeguards they put in place, or indeed fail to put in place.
That makes a lot of sense. It really puts the responsibility squarely back on us, doesn't it? What else does his insider perspective reveal?
He highlights that while AI can achieve some remarkable feats, its limitations are often underestimated. We talked about brittleness earlier.
Right, failing outside its training data.
Yeah, it can fail spectacularly when it encounters situations it wasn't trained on those edge cases. It also really struggles with things that humans take for granted, like common sense and nuanced judgment. it can't really grasp context in the way we do.
So it's not as universally adaptable or, well, smart as we might sometimes imagine from the headlines.
Not at all, not in a general sense. And Barnier also points out that while we see rapid progress in certain areas, the overall path towards truly general intelligence, that AGI we mentioned, is likely to be much slower and face fundamental scientific hurdles, not just engineering challenges.
So maybe calm down on the AGI panic for now.
It certainly helps to temper some of the more breathless predictions about AGI arriving any day now. Instead of focusing on this hypothetical future, Barnier shifts our attention to the tangible challenges we're facing right now with the AI we actually have.
Okay, and what are some of those more immediate, concrete issues?
He emphasizes the very real challenges around ensuring the data we use to train AI is high quality and representative, trying to avoid baking in existing societal biases.
That's a big one.
Huge. Also, developing AI models that are more interpretable and explainable, reducing that black box problem so we can understand why an AI made a particular decision, especially in high-stakes areas like healthcare or finance.
Right. You want to know why you were denied a loan.
Exactly. Plus, ensuring these systems are robust and secure against manipulation or attack. And really importantly, thoughtfully managing the societal impacts, like how AI might affect the workforce and potentially widen inequalities. But he frames these not as insurmountable obstacles that cause panic, but as solvable problems that require collaboration, careful attention, research, and thoughtful engineering.
These are definitely more concrete issues we can wrap our heads around and hopefully work towards addressing. Okay, let's move into deconstructing some of those specific fears we touched on earlier. First up, the job apocalypse narrative. This is like a really big one for a lot of people.
It is a very immediate concern, and Barnier tackles it head-on. He draws a crucial distinction between automation replacing specific tasks within a job versus the wholesale elimination of entire jobs.
Okay, tasks versus jobs.
Yeah. Many AI tools are being designed to handle the more repetitive, data-intensive, or pattern recognition aspects of work. This can actually free up humans to focus on the more complex, creative, strategic, and importantly, interpersonal elements of their roles.
Can you give an example?
Sure. He gives the example of a radiologist. AI might be used to help screen medical scans more efficiently, maybe highlighting areas of potential concern. But it doesn't replace the radiologist's overall expertise, their judgment, their ability to consult with other doctors or communicate with the patient. It augments their ability.
That makes sense. It's more about augmentation than complete replacement in many cases. And the book also touches on how new technologies tend to create new jobs too, right?
Absolutely. Think about the roles that have emerged around AI in just the last few years. AI trainers, data scientists, prompt engineers, people focused specifically on AI ethics.
Prompt engineers. That's a new one for many people.
It is. These were largely nascent or non-existent fields not long ago. Barnier draws a really interesting historical parallel here, looking back at the Luddites during the Industrial Revolution.
The ones smashing the machines.
Right. They feared the textile machinery would destroy their livelihoods. And while there was certainly short-term disruption, and that was very real for those individuals, the Industrial Revolution ultimately led to massive economic growth and the creation of far more jobs overall, albeit different kinds of jobs. He makes a similar point about the rise of personal computers. There were fears then, too, about job displacement, but look at the industries and roles that emerged because of PCs and the internet.
So history suggests that economies tend to evolve, sometimes painfully, but they evolve rather than simply collapsing in the face of technological change.
Exactly. The real challenge, Barnier argues, isn't trying to stop automation, which is likely impossible and perhaps even undesirable in the long run, but rather managing the transition effectively.
How do we do that?
Well, it means investing seriously in education and reskilling initiatives to prepare the workforce for the changing demands. It means providing robust social safety nets for those who are displaced during the transition. And it means fostering a culture of lifelong learning and adaptability.
So practical steps.
Focusing on those practical steps is much more productive than just, panicking about a potential job apocalypse.
Okay, that's helpful. Now let's switch gears slightly to another major concern: bias and fairness. The fear that AI systems might perpetuate or even amplify existing societal biases. This feels deeply concerning.
It is deeply concerning, and Barnier validates this fear completely. He explains that the primary source of bias in AI often comes from the data it's trained on.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Essentially, yes. If the historical data reflects societal discrimination, whether it's racial bias in loan applications, gender bias in hiring patterns, whatever it might be, the AI will learn those biases unless steps are taken to prevent it.
So it just learns our own prejudices.
It can, yeah. Bias can also creep in through the design choices made by the developers, or even from a lack of diversity within the teams building the AI. If everyone building the system comes from a similar background, they might unintentionally overlook potential biases or impacts on different groups.
That makes sense. Is there any good news on this front?
There is. The good news is that the AI research community is very aware of this problem and is actively working on techniques to identify, measure, and mitigate bias in algorithms. It's an ongoing engineering and ethical challenge for sure, but it's being tackled seriously. It's not being ignored.
That's reassuring. Okay, another big fear, AI in the wrong hands. The potential for misuse and security threats. This is where those sci-fi anxieties about, autonomous weapons or mass surveillance often creep in.
Right. Barnier acknowledges the dual-use nature of AI. Like many powerful technologies, it can indeed be used for both beneficial and harmful purposes. Concerns about autonomous weapons, sophisticated cyber attacks powered by AI, the creation of convincing deepfakes to spread disinformation, or pervasive surveillance systems, these are all valid worries.
They feel very real.
They are. However, he reframes the narrative. Instead of portraying AI itself as inherently malicious, he focuses on the human actors and the systems of governance or lack thereof. An algorithm itself doesn't have intent, remember?
Right, it's a tool.
It's a tool that can be wielded by people or organizations with specific agendas, good or bad. The challenge, therefore, lies in proactively anticipating and mitigating these risks through things like responsible development practices, building robust security measures into AI systems from the start, and establishing effective governance frameworks, clear rules, regulations, and oversight at both national and international levels. It's about managing the tool, not just fearing it.
So it's about responsible stewardship rather than just fearing the technology itself. Now, we've looked at these specific fears, but Barnier also delves into the underlying psychology of why these anxieties resonate so strongly. He talks about the architecture of anxiety, what's going on there.
Oh, it's fascinating. He points to several cognitive biases that kind of amplify our fears about AI. We already mentioned the availability heuristic.
Where vivid examples stick in our minds.
Yeah, exactly. Those sensationalized news reports or dramatic movie portrayals like Terminator are easily recalled and can make us overestimate the likelihood of those extreme scenarios actually happening. They're just more memorable than, say, a nuanced discussion about algorithmic limitations.
Makes sense.
And then there's the negativity bias, our natural human tendency to pay more attention to potential threats than potential benefits. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism, but it means news about AI risks is likely to grab our attention more easily and feel more significant.
So bad news travels faster, especially with AI.
It often seems that way. Barnier points out how these biases work together. The vivid images of rogue AI trigger the availability heuristic, while our negativity bias makes us focus on the potential danger, making us overestimate the likelihood of these dramatic events, far more than, say, the everyday reality of algorithms making slightly imperfect recommendations or maybe subtly biased decisions.
Which are less sensational, but perhaps more common issues.
Perhaps. And another really interesting point he makes is about anthropomorphism, our tendency to attribute human-like qualities and intentions to machines.
Like saying the AI thinks or wants something.
Exactly. We talk about AI learning or deciding, which makes it easier to imagine them developing human-like, potentially malevolent goals, even though the reality of how current AI operates as complex pattern-matching systems is very, very different.
So understanding these psychological factors is important.
It's so important because it helps us recognize why certain fears feel so compelling, even when they might not have a strong factual basis right now. It empowers us to critically examine our own reactions and the information we consume.
Okay.
By separating legitimate caution about real-world challenges like bias or job transitions or security from the more irrational panic fueled by myths about uncontrollable superintelligence, we can clear the fog and approach AI with informed awareness rather than paralyzing fear.
Okay, so we're getting a clearer picture of what AI is and maybe why we feel the way we do about it. Now let's talk about the flip side. Barnier has a chapter called Know Your Limits, What AI Can't Do and Might Never Do. This seems crucial for grounding our expectations and maybe dialing down the hype a bit.
It is indeed. While AI can perform some incredible feats within its narrow domains, it's really important to remember where it currently falls short compared to human intelligence. Barnier highlights several key areas.
Like what?
Well, one is true creativity and originality. While AI, especially generative AI, can produce novel-seeming content, text, images, music, it's essentially remixing patterns it has learned from vast data sets.
It's mimicking creativity.
In a way, it lacks genuine subjective experience, intention, and the deep cultural understanding that drives human creativity. So it can create something that looks new, but it doesn't have that spark of original thought, that lived experience that humans bring.
Okay, what else?
Another major limitation is robust common sense. Humans have this huge reservoir of intuitive knowledge about how the world works, things we just know without being explicitly taught. AI systems generally lack this.
Right, like knowing water is wet or you can't push a rope.
Exactly. And because they lack this, they can often make absurd errors or nonsensical suggestions when faced with situations even slightly outside their training data. That's where those strange, unexpected AI mistakes we sometimes hear about come from.
The brittleness again.
Precisely. Barnier also points to the lack of genuine understanding. While AI can manipulate language with impressive fluency, appearing to understand, it doesn't truly comprehend meaning in the way a human does. Large language models are essentially very sophisticated pattern matchers predicting the next likely word in a sequence. They don't have beliefs or consciousness or semantic grounding in the real world.
It's statistical, not semantic.
Well put. And finally, he emphasizes the absence of true empathy and emotional intelligence. While AI can be programmed to recognize and even mimic human emotional expressions, maybe a chatbot sounds sympathetic, it doesn't actually feel empathy. That connection, that shared feeling, is uniquely human.
These limitations really underscore the fact that human intelligence still brings something unique and essential to the table, don't they?
Absolutely. Things like critical thinking, complex problem solving in novel situations, ethical judgment, creativity, empathy. These remain distinctly human capabilities, at least for the foreseeable future.
Now, with all this in mind, the capabilities, the limitations, the anxieties, Barnier shifts the focus to steering the ship, human agency in the age of AI. This sounds like a really empowering perspective after talking about fears and limits.
It is. The core message here is incredibly important. AI doesn't have agency in the human sense. We are still the ones in control. We are steering the ship.
Despite narratives sometimes portraying AI as this autonomous force taking over.
Exactly. Despite those narratives, AI's trajectory and its impact are overwhelmingly determined by human choices. The goals we set for it, the data we feed it, the safeguards and ethical considerations we build into it, or fail to.
So it comes back to responsibility again.
Absolutely. Barnier stresses that AI is a tool. A potentially transformative tool, yes, but still a tool. And like any tool, from a hammer to the internet, we are responsible for how we build it, how we wield it, and the consequences of its use. This perspective shifts the focus from fearing the technology itself to taking ownership of its development and deployment. It's about conscious choices.
It's a really important reminder that we're not just passive bystanders in this technological unfolding. We have a role, a responsibility. Now, one of the things I found particularly insightful in the book, especially for combating that feeling of being overwhelmed, was the chapter on our history of adaptation. It's easy to feel like AI change is unprecedentedly fast, but looking back offers valuable perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Barnier doesn't just briefly mention historical parallels. He takes a deeper dive into specific examples like electricity, the printing press, automobiles, and the internet. And it's fascinating.
What does he show?
He shows how each of these technologies, which we now take for granted, initially sparked significant fears and anxieties. Worries about disruption, job losses, safety, societal upheaval sound familiar.
Very familiar.
But importantly, he also highlights the mechanisms through which societies ultimately adapted to these massive changes. It wasn't automatic, it was an active process.
Right. Like with electricity, there were initial fears about danger, fires, disrupting traditional life.
Exactly. But then we adapted. We developed power grids, invented countless new appliances, established safety regulations and electrical codes, educated people on how to use it safely. It led to huge productivity gains, new industries, even longer lifespans eventually.
And the printing press. Fears of information overload, undermining religious and political authority, spreading heresy.
Big fears. But it ultimately democratized knowledge, fueled huge societal shifts like the Renaissance and the Reformation, and led to the spread of literacy. We adapted through wider access to education, the development of journalism, new forms of public discourse, even censorship initially, which was also a form of adaptation, albeit a controlling one.
And the automobile. Concerns about safety compared to horses, noise, pollution, changing the fabric of cities.
All true. But it revolutionized transportation, enabled suburbanization, created vast new industries from manufacturing to oil to tourism. And we adapted by creating traffic laws, building massive road infrastructure, implementing driver education, changing urban planning.
And the internet, the most recent parallel. Huge fears about privacy loss, misinformation, addiction, erosion of real-world social connections.
And those are still ongoing debates. But the internet also enabled unprecedented global communication, e-commerce, access to information, new forms of community, and we're still adapting through things like cybersecurity measures, content moderation efforts, however imperfect, digital literacy initiatives, and evolving social norms around online behavior.
So what's the key takeaway from looking back like this?
The key takeaway is that adaptation is not a passive process, it's active. It involves human innovation, developing new tools and solutions. It involves social commitments, like creating regulations and safety standards. It involves building infrastructure, investing in education and reskilling, and often requires significant social and cultural shifts in how we live and work.
And importantly, while there's often short-term disruption, which can be very difficult for those affected.
Yes, and we shouldn't minimize that. These transformative technologies have historically led to more opportunity and economic growth in the long run, although those benefits aren't always evenly distributed, which is another crucial point.
So the idea is that we can apply these lessons to AI.
Exactly. Barnier argues that by consciously applying these same adaptation mechanisms to the AI era, investing heavily in AI literacy for everyone, developing thoughtful and flexible governance structures, fostering open public dialogue about values and goals, encouraging responsible innovation focused on human well-being, and building robust safety nets and transition support, we can navigate this transition effectively. Our history really does provide a kind of blueprint for building resilience. It instills confidence that society can adapt even to radical change.
That historical context is so grounding. It reminds us that we've been here before, faced massive shifts, and found ways to move forward, not by stopping change, but by shaping it. Now, moving towards the future, Barnier talks about co-creating the future, the potential and the pragmatic path. It's not all doom and gloom or managing risks. There are incredible potential benefits if we steer this right.
Absolutely. Beyond all the hype and the fear, there are very real and incredibly exciting realistic benefits that AI can bring, particularly narrow AI in the near term. Think about medicine. Faster drug discovery by analyzing biological data at scale, potential for personalized treatments tailored to an individual's unique genetic makeup or disease profile, improved diagnostic tools that can spot subtle signs doctors won't miss, assistance in robotic surgery for greater precision. The potential impact on health is enormous.
That sounds amazing. What about other areas?
In science more broadly, AI can accelerate research by helping scientists analyze massive and complex data sets, like climate models or astronomical observations, potentially leading to new discoveries in critical fields. It offers incredible potential for accessibility, powering sophisticated tools for people with disabilities, advanced screen readers, real-time speech-to-text and translation, maybe even robotic aids for mobility.
Okay.
And across various industries, it can drive significant efficiency gains by optimizing complex systems like supply chains, improving resource management in energy or agriculture, and reducing waste. These might sound less glamorous than AGI, but their cumulative impact could be huge.
So the potential is there, but it requires careful management.
Exactly. Barnier emphasizes that the key is to manage the risks constructively. It's about moving from a mindset of trying to stop AI development, which is probably futile, to one of learning how to steer it responsibly.
How do we steer it?
By establishing and adhering to clear principles for responsible innovation and deployment. Things like fairness, transparency, accountability, safety, security, and ensuring that AI is developed and used in ways that align with human values and promote well-being. He paints a picture of a future where AI truly augments human potential.
Augments, not replaces.
Right. Handling the more tedious, repetitive, data-heavy tasks, freeing us humans up for more creative, empathetic, strategic, and collaborative endeavors. Tackling complex global problems like climate change or disease through powerful human-AI collaboration. Enhancing learning, health, and maybe even human connection in new ways. This is a plausible and desirable future, he argues, but it's one we have to actively work towards.
That's a much more hopeful and constructive vision than the dystopian ones we often hear. Now, for the really practical part, the what can I do part, what can you, the listener, do to navigate this new landscape? Barnier has a chapter called Your AI Toolkit, Navigating the Now. What's in this toolkit?
This chapter is all about practical engagement, getting your hands dirty, so to speak. But Barnier starts with a crucial caveat. AI, especially generative AI like ChatGPT or Midjourney, is evolving incredibly rapidly. So the focus shouldn't be on memorizing specific instructions for today's software because they'll be outdated tomorrow.
Right, it changes so fast.
Exactly. The focus should be on building foundational skills, developing critical awareness, and learning how to learn alongside these tools. He frames it as building a starter kit and, maybe more importantly, developing a compass for navigation.
Okay, so what's in the starter kit? How can we use these common tools effectively?
He walks through effectively using common AI tools that are readily available. For example, large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT or Gemini, you can use them as thinking partners.
Thinking partner.
Yeah. For brainstorming ideas on a topic, drafting initial versions of text like emails, reports, even creative writing, summarizing lengthy documents to get the gist quickly, explaining complex topics in simpler terms or different ways, even practicing for conversations or interviews.
Right, with the big asterisk.
A huge asterisk. Always, always review, verify, and refine the output. LMs can make mistakes, they can hallucinate information, they reflect biases in their training data. Treat their output as a starting point, a draft, never as finished. Unquestionable truth. Critical thinking is essential.
Okay, what about other tools, image generators?
Image generators like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion can be useful for creating visual aids for presentations, sparking inspiration for creative projects, or generating unique graphic assets. Again, you usually need to refine the prompts and maybe even edit the output to get exactly what you want. They're getting better, but they aren't magic.
Voice synthesis, video.
He briefly mentions voice synthesis and creating tools, which can be used for things like creating voiceovers, accessibility features, or personalized audio messages, but he strongly cautions about the ethical implications and potential for misuse, like deepfake audio.
Right, that's a big concern.
Definitely. Music generators can help create royalty-free background music or spark musical ideas. Video generators are still more nascent, but can help create short clips, simple animations, or assist with video editing tasks. The key with all these generative tools is experimentation and understanding their limitations. They are pattern matchers, not truly creative or understanding beings.
So experimentation and critical evaluation are key. He also gives tips on prompt engineering, right? How to talk to these AIs.
Yes, and this is becoming a really valuable skill. Getting good results often depends on how you ask. He suggests being specific and clear in your requests. Don't be vague. Provide context. Who is the audience? What is the purpose? Define the desired format and tone. Again, write a professional email, explain this like I'm 5, create a bulleted list.
Makes sense.
And importantly, iterate and refine. Treat it like a conversation. If the first result isn't quite right, tweak your prompt, ask follow-up questions, guide the AI towards what you need, experiment with different phrasing.
So it's a skill you develop over time.
Absolutely. And it reinforces that idea of treating AI output as a starting point, something you collaborate with and shape, rather than just accepting the first thing it gives you.
And it's not just about these new standalone AI tools like ChatGPT, is it? Barnier points out that AI is already embedded in so many of the tools we use every day, often working behind the scenes.
That's right, and it's important to recognize this. Think about the recommendation algorithms that suggest videos on YouTube or products on Amazon, the navigation apps like Google Maps or Waze that find the fastest routes, constantly analyzing traffic data.
Smart assistants like Siri or Alexa.
Definitely. The algorithms that curate your social media feeds, deciding what posts you see. Even things like the spam filters in your email inbox or the fraud detection systems your bank uses to flag suspicious transactions. AI is already woven into the fabric of our digital lives.
So being unscared also means being aware of how these systems are influencing our choices in information diets.
Precisely. The real key, Barnier emphasizes, isn't just learning to use one specific tool, but building those foundational digital literacy skills. And crucially, learning how to learn alongside AI as it continues to develop and become even more integrated into our tools and workflows. It's about adaptability.
Okay, that gives us a good practical toolkit. But beyond just using AI, Barnier stresses the importance of ethics. He talks about developing an AI compass. This feels like a deeper level of engagement.
It is. It moves beyond just acknowledging issues like bias or misuse and encourages us to actively calibrate our own ethical compass when thinking about and interacting with AI. He argues that having this ethical grounding is part of being prepared and unscared.
What kind of ethical terrain does he map out?
He highlights several key areas for consideration: transparency and explainability. How much do we need to understand about how an AI reaches its decisions, especially when those decisions have significant impacts on people's lives? Is a black box ever acceptable?
That's a tough question.
It is. Then there's accountability. If an AI system makes a mistake or causes harm, who is responsible? The developers, the company that deployed it, the user, the AI itself. Our legal and ethical frameworks are still catching up here.
Yeah, definitely.
Human oversight, finding the right balance between leveraging AI's speed and efficiency and retaining meaningful human judgment and control, especially in critical situations like medical diagnosis or military actions. Privacy, the implications of pervasive AI analysis on our fundamental rights. How is our data being collected, used, potentially combined? What are the long-term societal effects of constant monitoring or subtle manipulation?
Well, these are huge societal questions.
They are. And finally, broader societal impact. Is AI exacerbating existing inequalities? Is it leading to social fragmentation? What is our collective responsibility to manage its development ethically and ensure its benefits are shared broadly?
So how do we develop this ethical radar in practice?
Barnier suggests consistently asking the right questions when encountering or considering AI applications. Questions like, who benefits from this AI system? Who might be harmed or disadvantaged? What biases might be present in the training data or design? How transparent is its decision-making process? Can decisions be explained and appealed? What mechanisms are in place for accountability if something goes wrong? Does its use align with fundamental human rights and well-being?
It's about critical inquiry.
Exactly. He emphasizes that no one has all the answers right now, but the act of asking these questions as developers, as policymakers, as users, as citizens is absolutely crucial for steering AI development and deployment in a responsible direction.
So being ethically aware is part of being prepared. Now, one thing I really appreciated, because it pushes back against the hype, was the chapter titled, Don't Use AI for That. When simpler is smarter. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking AI is the magical solution to everything.
It really is, and Barnier provides some excellent reality checks here. Just because you can use AI for something doesn't mean you should. Overenthusiasm can lead to inefficient, costly, overly complex, and sometimes just plain unnecessary applications of AI.
Can you give some examples of when simpler is smarter?
Sure. For basic scheduling and setting reminders, your standard calendar app or a simple to-do list is usually perfectly adequate and much simpler than trying to get an AI to manage it. For basic data entry and organization, well-used spreadsheets or simple databases are often more straightforward and give you more direct control. Tasks that fundamentally require deep empathy, nuanced understanding of human emotions, or building trust, think genuine emotional support, complex conflict mediation, delivering sensitive personal feedback. These still rely on human connection. AI might mimic empathy, but it's not the same.
Right, the human touch.
Exactly.
Right.
Also, problems that can be easily solved with simple logic, like basic if this then that rules or straightforward automation scripts, often don't need the complexity and potential unpredictability of a machine learning model. And crucially, situations demanding absolute, verifiable accuracy, things like legal contracts, safety checklists, financial audits, must have rigorous human verification. AI might assist, but it can't be the final authority where errors are unacceptable.
He also mentioned something about when the process itself is the point.
Yes. Sometimes the inherent value lies in the human effort involved. Think about writing your wedding vows or manually analyzing a small data set yourself to gain a really deep intuitive understanding of it, or even the therapeutic value of journaling. Automating these with AI might miss the entire point of the activity.
That's a great point. So what are the simpler alternatives?
Often it's just manual effort, using standard software tools effectively, employing basic automation or scripting where appropriate, or sometimes the best solution is simply improving human processes and communication.
It comes down to choosing the right tool for the job.
Precisely. Barnier introduces what he calls the think first principle. Before jumping to deploy AI, ask critical questions. What is the actual problem we're trying to solve here? Is AI genuinely the most effective and appropriate way to address it? What are the potential costs, complexities, and risks involved? Are there simpler, more reliable alternatives available? Is this truly needed, or are we just caught up in the AI hype?
That critical thinking step seems essential.
It ensures we use AI wisely, where it adds real tangible value, and we opt for simpler, more established, and often more reliable solutions when they are a better fit. That discernment is a key part of the unscared approach. Being informed enough to know when not to use AI is just as important as knowing how to use it.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground today. We've gone from understanding the roots of AI anxiety to demystifying the core technology, exploring its current capabilities, and, importantly, its limitations. We've looked at historical parallels of technological adaptation, considered the ethical dimensions, and finally landed on practical ways you, the listener, can engage with AI, including knowing when not to. As we start to wrap up, what's the core message you'd really like to leave our listeners with from this deep dive into Barnier's Unscared AI?
I think the core message, really building on Barnier's work, is that we've hopefully journeyed from a place where AI might have felt overwhelming, confusing, maybe even scary, to a place of greater understanding and, crucially, empowerment. Becoming unscared isn't about ignoring the potential challenges or risks of AI. Those are real and need attention.
Right, it's not about being naive.
Not at all. It's about equipping yourself with the knowledge, the critical thinking skills, and the right mindset to navigate this evolving landscape with confidence rather than fear. It's an ongoing process, not a one-time fix. It's built on continuous learning, thoughtfully evaluating the information you encounter, recognizing our own human agency in shaping AI's future, and maintaining a commitment to using these powerful tools responsibly and ethically.
And in our daily lives, what does adopting this unscared mindset actually look like? How does it translate into action?
Well, I think it means cultivating a sense of curiosity about AI, wanting to understand it, but without being blindly credulous or falling for the hype. It means practicing intentional and discerning usage of AI tools, choosing when and how to use them effectively, as we just discussed. It means continuing to value and develop our unique human strength, things like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, ethical judgment, recognizing that these remain vital. It means consistently applying your ethical compass, asking those critical questions about fairness, transparency, and impact. And it means engaging in informed conversations with others, friends, colleagues, communities, about AI's role in our society. It's not something happening to us. It's something we are collectively shaping.
So it's about recognizing that living wisely with AI is not a passive experience at all. It's an active journey that requires our ongoing engagement, critical thought, and willingness to learn and adapt.
Exactly. And it extends beyond just our individual actions, too. Collectively, as societies, we have a role to play. Fostering broader AI literacy across the population, working towards building AI systems that are genuinely trustworthy, robust, and aligned with human values, advocating for transparency and accountability from those developing and deploying AI, and collaboratively shaping the ethical norms, standards, and maybe even regulations that will guide its integration into our world in the years to come.
It's a shared responsibility. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the final thought you'd like to leave our listeners mulling over?
I think, drawing from Barnier's overall perspective, the most important final thought is this. The future of AI isn't some predetermined path leading inevitably to either utopia or dystopia, humans versus machines. That's too simplistic.
Right.
Instead, the future we're heading towards is almost certainly one where humans and machines increasingly work together, collaborate, coexist. The crucial point is that we still have significant influence over what that future looks like. By choosing to approach AI with a mindset of preparation, critical engagement, and ethical awareness, rather than succumbing to fear and panic, we retain the power to steer this incredibly powerful technology towards augmenting our human capabilities, solving real problems, and building a future that truly benefits all of us. That's both the promise and, I think, the responsibility of being unscared.